We have been told a story about ourselves, and it is a very ugly story. It goes like this. You are a parasite. I am a parasite. Human beings are basically intelligent locusts. If you give us a shared resource, a forest, a lake, or the atmosphere, we will greedily consume it until there is nothing left. We will commit ecological suicide just to get a little bit richer today.
This idea has a name. It's called the tragedy of the commons. In 1968, a biologist named Garrett Hardin wrote an article that infected the brains of every politician and economist on Earth. He argued that because humans are selfish, we cannot be trusted to manage shared resources.
His conclusion? We only have two choices to save the planet. One, Leviathan, a massive totalitarian government that forces us to behave. Two, privatization. Sell nature to corporations because people only protect what they own.
For 40 years, this was the gospel. It's why we have massive bureaucracies. It's why we privatized water. It's based on the belief that you are the problem. But what if that story is a lie?
What if I told you that for thousands of years, illiterate farmers in Nepal and fishermen in Turkey have been solving these problems perfectly, without the government and without corporations? What if the solution to climate change isn't in Washington, D.C. or Wall Street, but in your local neighborhood?
In 2009, something historic happened. For the first time ever, the Nobel Committee stopped looking at math-obsessed men in suits and gave the prize to a woman who actually went out into the mud to talk to real people.
Her name was Elinor Ostrom, and she shared the prize with Oliver Williamson, a man who asked a completely different but equally terrifying question. Why do giant corporations even exist?
Together, these two exploded the myths of modern capitalism. They proved that humans aren't just selfish monsters, and giant organizations, governments, and corporations often make things worse, not better.
If you are frustrated by useless climate summits and corporations like Boeing falling apart, pay attention. The 2009 Nobel Prize explains exactly why our world is malfunctioning.
So how do we actually organize human beings without chaos? Let's start with Elinor Ostrom. She looked at the tragedy of the commons and said, Hardin is wrong because he forgot one thing. Humans talk.
Hardin thought we were mindless cows grazing in a field. Ostrom proved we are social creatures. She cited everything from Swiss pastures to Japanese forests and found a third way. It wasn't government and it wasn't private property. It was self-governance.
Think of a community garden. There are no police officers standing guard. Nobody owns the land individually. Yet, it doesn't turn into a jungle. Why?
Because of social sanctions. If you steal tomatoes or don't water the plants, you don't go to jail. Instead, the terrifying neighborhood grandma yells at you. You get gossiped about. You get excluded from the next barbecue.
Ostrom discovered 8 principles for managing shared resources. The most important one, monitoring by the users themselves. We don't need a sheriff. We police each other because we all want the garden to survive. It is bottom-up control.
Now flip the coin to Oliver Williamson. While Ostrom was looking at lakes, Williamson was looking at boardrooms. He asked, why do companies exist?
This sounds like a dumb question, but think about it. Why does Apple hire a janitor? Why don't they just pay a freelancer every time a toilet needs cleaning? Why does Ford build engines instead of buying them from a guy named Bob?
Williamson said the answer is transaction costs. The market is great, but it's a headache. Imagine if every morning you had to negotiate a contract with your coffee maker, then a contract with your car driver, then a contract with your email provider. You would spend all day negotiating and get zero work done. That is friction.
So Williamson argued that when transaction costs get too high, when it's too risky, complex, or annoying to trust the open market, we build a fortress. We build a firm, company.
We bring everything inside the walls. We hire the janitor full-time. We succumb to hierarchy. It's a trade-off.
The market is efficient but risky, high transaction cost. The firm is safe but bureaucratic, low transaction cost but high management cost.
So here is the Nobel revelation. Ostrom showed us that communities can solve problems that government can't. Williamson showed us that corporations are just a necessary evil to avoid the chaos of the market.
Both of them proved that one size fits all is a lie. Sometimes you need a grandma, sometimes you need a CEO. And when you use the wrong tool for the job, disasters happen. Let's talk about lobsters. In the 1920s, the lobster industry in Maine was facing a crisis. Overfishing was rampant. It was the classic tragedy of the commons. Every fisherman wanted to catch as many lobsters as possible before his neighbor did. If they kept going, the lobsters would go extinct and everyone would starve.
The US government tried to help. They sent bureaucrats from Washington with clipboards. They tried to draw lines on maps. They failed.
So the fishermen of Maine did something else. They ignored the government and formed the lobster gangs.
This wasn't an official organization. There was no CEO, there was no handbook. It was a brutal, unwritten system of territoriality. Elinor Ostrom studied systems like this and realized these uneducated fishermen were actually genius economists.
Here's how the lobster mafia works. Rule number 1, the invisible fence. Every harbor has its own territory. You from Harbor A, you stay in Harbor A. If you cross the invisible line into Harbor B to steal their lobsters, you have a problem.
Rule number 2, graduated sanctions. This is the genius part. Ostrom identified that for self-governance to work, punishment must be progressive. You don't just shoot someone for a first offense.
If an outsider puts a trap in your territory, first you leave a warning. Maybe you tie a special knot on his buoy. A signal. We saw you. Go away.
If he ignores it, you escalate. You open his trap and let the lobsters out. He loses money, but he keeps his gear.
If he still comes back, you cut the line. The trap sinks to the bottom of the ocean, he loses hundreds of dollars in equipment.
And if he is totally crazy and keeps coming, well, let's just say boats have a mysterious way of sinking in the harbor at night.
The result? Well, the cod fishery nearby collapsed due to overfishing despite billions of dollars in government regulation. The Maine lobster fishery is one of the most sustainable in the world. The stocks are healthy, the catches are high.
Why? Because the people using the resource were the ones protecting it.
Ostrom proved that these local gangs had more incentive to protect the baby lobsters than a government official sitting in a warm office 500 miles away. They knew that if they killed the babies today, their children would have nothing to eat tomorrow. This is the power of CPR, or Common Pool Resource Management.
It turns out you don't always need the FBI to save the environment. Sometimes all you need is a tight-knit community, a shared code of honor, and a sharp knife.
While Elinor Ostrom was swimming with lobsters, Oliver Williamson was sitting in a leather chair asking the opposite question: when should you not trust the market?
His answer explains the catastrophic collapse of one of America's greatest companies, Boeing.
For decades, Boeing was a fortress. They were what Williamson called a hierarchical firm. They designed the planes, they built the fuselages, they tightened the bolts, they did it in-house. Why? Because building a jetliner is incredibly complex.
Williamson called this asset specificity. When a product is super complex and safety critical, you cannot rely on a random supplier. The transaction cost of checking their work is too high. You need to own the process. You need vertical integration.
But in the 2000s, Boeing executives got greedy. They looked at the spreadsheets and said, why are we paying all these expensive American union workers? Let's outsource.
They decided to break the Williamson rule. They sold off their fuselage factories, Spirit Aerosystems. They outsourced software code to $9 an hour temporary workers. They turned Boeing from a manufacturer into a financial holding company that just glues parts together.
On paper, this looked genius. Production costs went down, stock prices went up, Wall Street cheered.
But then, the doors started falling off. What Boeing missed, and what Williamson won a Nobel Prize for predicting, is that when you outsource critical parts, you don't just lose control, you create a holdup problem.
Suddenly, Boeing didn't know if the bolts were tightened. They didn't know if the software was buggy. To find out, they would have to hire an army of inspectors to fly around the world checking on suppliers.
Guess what? That costs money. That is a massive transaction cost. So Boeing tried to cheat. They skipped the inspections. They trusted the market to regulate itself.
The result wasn't just inefficiency, it was death. The 737 MAX crashes and the Alaska Airlines blowout prove that you cannot outsource responsibility.
Williamson's theory is the grim reaper of modern consulting. He warned that if you try to use the market for things that belong in a hierarchy, you will fail.
Boeing thought they could dismantle the fortress to save a few pennies. Instead, they destroyed the reputation, killed hundreds of people, and proved Williamson right in the most tragic way possible. The invisible hand doesn't tighten bolts. People do.
So here we are in 2025. The world is getting hotter and the corporations are getting bigger. How do Ostrom and Williamson help us survive this mess?
First, let's look at the climate crisis. Every year, world leaders fly on private jets to a fancy city for a COP summit. They sign a piece of paper promising to cut carbon. And every year, emissions go up. Why?
Because we are ignoring Elinor Ostrom. We are obsessed with the Leviathan solution, waiting for a global messiah or world government to fix everything from the top down. Ostrom proved mathematically that this never works. It's too slow. It's too far from the problem.
Her solution for 2025 is polycentricity.
Instead of waiting for the UN, we need thousands of local lobster gangs. We need cities, states, and neighborhoods to manage their own energy. If a town in California wants to man gas cars, let them. If a village in Vietnam wants to protect its mangroves to stop flooding, let them.
Ostrom taught us that climate action is local. You can't cool the planet if you can't even govern your own backyard. We need to stop looking up at the sky for a savior and start looking at our neighbors.
Now, what about the tech giants? Amazon, Google, and Apple have become the hierarchies that Williamson described, but they have grown so big they are hitting a wall called diseconomies of scale.
Williamson warned that when a firm gets too huge, the internal bureaucracy becomes more expensive than the market itself.
Look at Google. They are so terrified of internal transaction costs, lawsuits, brand risk, internal politics that they have stopped innovating. They just buy competitors. They have become slow, bloated whales.
And Amazon? Amazon isn't just a company anymore. It's a Soviet-style planned economy. They control the prices, the shipping, the cloud servers, and the marketplace. They have internalized so many transactions that they have destroyed the free market around them.
The U.S. Department of Justice, DOJ, is currently suing these companies. And guess what their argument is? It's pure Williamson.
They're saying these companies have built walled gardens, high transaction costs to leave that trap consumers. If you buy an iPhone, you can't leave. You are locked in the fortress.
So the roadmap for 2025 is clear. For the planet, we need to go Ostrom mode. Decentralize, empower local communities, stop trusting the global elites to save us.
2. For the economy, we need to apply Williamson's warning. Break up the giants that have become too big to manage. Force them to lower the walls.
The Nobel Prize of 2009 wasn't just a trophy, it was a survival guide. We just forgot to read it.
For the last century, we have been trapped in a binary argument. The left screams, we need more government, the state must own everything. The right screams, we need more market, privatize everything. Elinor Ostrom and Oliver Williamson taught us that both sides are wrong. The government is too distant to care about your local river. The market is too ruthless to care about your community's future. They showed us a third way.
It's messy, it's hard, it requires you to actually talk to your neighbors. It requires you to be a citizen, not just a consumer.
Whether it's a group of fishermen protecting lobsters in Maine, or a tech company realizing it needs to stop outsourcing safety to save a few bucks, the lesson is the same. Governance works best when the people paying the price are the ones making the rules.
We are not selfish locusts. We are not mindless cogs in a corporate machine. We are capable of building systems that are fair, sustainable, and human.
But we have to choose to do it. We have to step out of the tragedy and start building the commons.
So here's my question for you. Do you trust your neighbors enough to manage a common resource, or do you think we are doomed to destroy everything we touch without a policeman watching? Let me know in the comments.
If you want to understand why the world is crazy, subscribe. We are just getting started.